as we've talked about, time and time again here, nothing is more valuable than the actual factual data from a provider or from our history showing us what our goals should be, because that way it's achievable.
Are we? So what I hear, and I love this, and this is an aha moment for hopefully for a lot of our listeners, is that are we able to push these vendors, these software companies, because of our size, or should anybody be able to pick up the phone and say, hey?
Yeah, my number one goal, looking at a new business, whether it has 20 employees or thousands, is you really don't know those answers until you build the relationship and you ask.
Welcome to Enrich Your Empire with Richie Huffman, the ultimate podcast for entrepreneurship, impactful wealth building, and effective team leadership. It's time to enrich your business and create a lasting legacy. Let's get to work.
Hey guys, so welcome back. Today we had Mason Viener with VienerX. Mason is our CIO here at Celebrate Schools and HFB. Guys, I'm telling you, I couldn't imagine that this podcast would have been as good as it is, because when you think about IT, it sounds kind of boring, but we map out some really great steps that every entrepreneur should pay attention to and go back and implement and ask these very important questions. I hope you enjoy the show. Okay, guys, so welcome back to Enrich Your Empire with Richie Huffman. Today, I'm super excited to welcome Mason Viener. Mason, how long have you been here now?
Well, Richie, I always see myself as a grow big story. I was here when I was about 14 years old, setting computers up for the first time we brought the STEAM program to the Celebrate brand.
Wow.
And then I was kind of in and out. So you could say 10 years in now, really 5 of working mostly with our Celebrate Enterprise brands, now with all the Huffman family brands. But wow. Yeah, that's one of my favorite things about this place is seeing myself grow up here and being here for really the length of my career.
Wow. Well, guys, before we jump into this, I know we kind of already jumped into it, but I was thinking about this this interview today, or this conversation today on the way in, and I thought about, first as our audience is hopefully a lot of entrepreneurs, people that want to get into entrepreneurship or are already entrepreneurs themselves. And I thought about our title of Enrich Your Empire. And I think it's such an amazing title, because before you start working on enriching your empire, you gotta get a clear vision on what does that mean to me. Right? What would that even mean to me? Like an empire, and I think everybody has their own version of an empire. So I want to plant that seed with you guys as entrepreneurs, or those that are thinking about being an entrepreneur. Like, what is that vision? And you and I, before we even got on the mic, started talking about that and what it takes to be an entrepreneur, and how most people only get to a certain point of a business because their skills start become a little bit more challenging, or they're not willing to stretch their imagination, or even stretch and start building the right infrastructure that it takes. But I want you guys to think about, what does that actually mean to me as being an entrepreneur and creating an empire? Like, what does success mean to me, and what does it look like? And most importantly, and I think this is the gift, how will I know when I get there? Because so many people, they just keep moving the goalposts, and they never, ever get to celebrate what they've actually been able to accomplish. That doesn't mean that you don't move the goalposts again, but once you hit the end zone of whatever end zone you describe it to be, celebrate. And I think that's one thing that entrepreneurs really forget to do.
Yeah, I was having a conversation last night about exactly that topic.
Really?
And I was talking about where VienerX is going, and all the excitement that we have around there. And it was sort of going back to the conversation we had before we got on here, is I don't do that now. Yeah. As a young entrepreneur, as somebody that's built one company, now building a second one, is really stopping to say, hey, we've grown X% at the end of this year.
Yeah.
That's great. And really taking the time not only to acknowledge it as yourself, as the person that's leading and driving the business forward, but your team that's around you, and giving them that reward, giving them that, pat on the back, or that bonus, or
celebration,
or whatever
right?
that is. And you get caught up sometimes in the, okay, we just did that, now let's do this.
The drive.
And it's something that when you have it, you see it on a day-to-day basis. You see it. You can talk to another entrepreneur, and you see that drive and that will to constantly win and get more and more and more. But you also have to stop and pause every once in a while and say, is this the right decision for me? Is this the right decision for my family? And make those choices knowing, the pros and the cons of them.
Got it. So you mentioned earlier that you've been here since you were 14. So I want to give people a perspective because you're not 36.
Yeah.
So how old are you, Mason?
24 now.
24. Okay. And so let's go back. So what exactly does VienerX do here at Celebrate?
Yeah, VienerX is a full-service chief information officer practice. That means that we run all the IT and the systems here at Celebrate. That goes into everything from cybersecurity to our IT strategy, which is something that we're going to talk about here. So what that roadmap and that plan looks like for business, down to the nuts and bolts of, hey, I can't print, or I need help on my desktop, and getting out into the field and solving those problems.
Yeah. So one thing that you taught me, it's all about first step in this is security, making sure we're protected. Second one is just desk help and break fix. And then the third piece of this is what?
All the cool stuff, right? Building. Who's your builder in-house is what we've called it. How are we applying things like AI? How are we applying things like Power BI and reporting and getting those things automated and out in the dashboards? And really, how are we driving the business and making this company more money through utilizing the tools that we have and bringing new tools into the business that really maximize what we're doing here and give everybody the parts of their job that it takes to succeed.
Yeah, I guess you're referencing to like dashboards and data and information.
Yeah, making sure that those things are at the fingertips, not only of, in our case, our franchise partners, but our corporate employees here, and everybody seeing that right set of data that they can use to analyze the business results and maximize their revenue.
Yeah, I want to make sure we're careful in this talk to make sure that we're not over certain businesses' heads, if that makes sense. Because we might get too far ahead and we're like, I'm just not there. I'm not there as a business. So maybe I'm super proud of what we've been able to do here before we get into all the shiny new objects like AI and ChatGPT and all that kind of good stuff. I know if my mom was listening to this, she'd be like, just turn it off because I have no interest or I'm not even there yet. But I think the way we've approached it is a really good approach. And I think the way we've approached this and how we've grown into now focused on how can we utilize AI is our first step was, are we maximizing the current software that we use? So take it from there.
Yeah, well, our approach was, as you said, right, looking at the tools we have now and evaluating them really from three main points. What are our inputs that our employees are doing? So if we're looking at something like a CRM system, are we capturing all the information on that lead? In our case, on that family and the child that goes into there. And really working through our teams and cross-functional departments on making sure the person that's actually entering that information or the person that's getting that form to enter that information, we're getting all the fields that we need to market to that person to make that sale. And if you go system by system and do that, you end up with a much, much better data set. Because everything always, when it comes back to AI or reporting or even really running a business, comes back to what is the data I'm getting out of that system? What's my ability to do it?
Bad data, bad information, right?
Yep, no doubt. And we went back to, in some cases, we need to go back to our partners and talk to them about adding more to that, giving us the ability to get the data from it and build our plan around it. From there, we started to
Let me ask a question real quick, mates. With all your experience, how many companies do you work with or come across that do not? Let me ask a different question, different way. What do you think is the percentage that most companies utilize their software, like the max?
Oof, that's a tough one. To really maximize it, I would say less than 10%.
Wow.
Yeah, if you look at things and right, we've gone down this path. Things you can do inside of the program, I'm going to say that's most commonly used, Microsoft Office. Really basic Microsoft Office license, your Word, your PowerPoint, your Outlook. If you even look at the things, setting something like a mail rule that's basic, right? Mm-hmm. Moving things for you into inboxes so you can sort through them and be efficient. Most people don't know that exists, right? And as time goes on, we really thought that this new age of your college grads, maybe in the last 10 years, people that have really had to use computer systems would be better at it. In fact, some of the studies that are out say they're weaker in things like Excel, which most of the business world still runs off of. Sure, they know how to make a PowerPoint or write a Word document, but your skills still go back to your foundation, right? Things that we teach in our celebrity schools, basic reading, math, English. You still need all those things. And yeah, while I might be great at using my iPhone, am I really good at using a business computer? And that's only made the systems usage honestly worse, because you have people that are, what's my path of least resistance now? And they're not really thinking. They're just, oh yeah, I've had this tool, I've used it, but I've never taken any really interest in how I can make myself more valuable to an organization.
Yeah, and I would put one more thing on top of that, which was we also analyze, is it still the right piece of software, right? Is it still relevant to today? Is there a better piece of software out there? And I know we're big fans of just off-the-shelf software, and it's served us very, very well. So first step, maximize the current software. What do we have? Are we utilizing it before we go and add more things onto our plate? And then from there, we went to what? Looking at BI?
Yeah, from there, in our approach, we had a lot of manual reporting, right? So we had taken a lot of that data out of the system, if you're following the story with it. And we had a lot of people here in Excel doing really, really honestly amazing things with
highlighters.
With the years of data that we had, being able to draw comparisons to it. And we really built an infrastructure that was hard to move off of, honestly, because it worked for us. It had gotten the business to a point where, as we grew, we started to see, hey, right now I need the highlighters. Now I got the magnifying glass on your desk. And
right.
I remember one day you came to me and you're like, Mason, we're moving backwards here. Like, we got to make that jump. But, we've looked at it before and we've kind of decided maybe it wasn't the right time, but we need to make that jump and get this to a point where it's automated. We're saving people time, because all these people, they have other jobs to drive the business forward. They don't need to be adding columns to things and taking that time to do it. And we jumped into the BI world, where you start to be able to automate processes, build a data lake, and then get to some really, really cool stuff down the road, where you can have an active data model. I can type my questions into it, and it looks at everything that my business had, everything that I'm feeding it, and tries to come up with the best answer. And that's our next step with where we are in building this. But most organizations, they get to that point where maybe they start to look at automating the processes. Maybe they outsource it to somebody once you have a written process that can offshore it. You can function through that. Or you really start to look at that BI and make that jump.
Let's stay there for a second, because I think that's really what I've appreciated the most, is just being able to, because I'm a visual guy, to actually visually, because when you're looking at sheets of numbers, you don't see pattern. Well, you could probably see a pattern, but it's hard to see really what the data is trying to tell you. And now with our new dashboards and the BI tools that we're using, we could easily see comparisons. We see all the information right in front of us, and then actually take it to the next step where we actually could, put in there, is this good or is this bad, right? Is this trending downward or is this trending upward, without having to look at numbers and find it on your own?
And I think, kind of going back to that first part that we talked about, where we define those things early. Sometimes, in my experience, I've walked into places and they don't really know what that set is. They look at the number at the bottom of the P&L.
What do you mean the set, Mace?
So in our case, we look at things like our Net Promoter Scores, right? So we factor in our customers, we factor in our occupancy percentage, we factor in our education scores, and we have those, and those are our big, bold points.
That's a great point.
We have those data sets, which sometimes makes my job harder, right? Because we're trying to connect to multiple places. We're doing multiple things. We're seeing it from both sides, the customer experience piece and the business piece. I've walked into places where they're like, we sell this product, we make this margin, and, we look at the number at the bottom of the month with our accountant, and it's great. From my perspective.
At least they know the margin they're looking for, so there's one.
But then you start to go down the path of, right, how we justify that number. Are we looking at any of our competitors, right? Have we found somebody in the industry that knows that? And from my seat, that CIO, the Chief Information Officer part of it, it's always been, what more can we get, right? Are we sending out the surveys? Do we have a response rate that's usable? How are we doing these things? What systems are we really utilizing to come up with that conclusion that we get at the end? In our case, having been part of the business, seen it from the background, seen a lot of these systems implemented, we were able to look at that dashboard and say, if we can capture these sets of numbers, color code it this way, draw these comparisons between column X, column Y, we'll know where the business is. And really get that health report. That was kind of what we nicknamed it here.
So back to your example of somebody that's just selling a product and looking for 30% margins in that. How many data, you're calling them data sets, right?
Yeah.
How many data sets are we looking at here?
So in that case, always, right, your key is going to be the point of sale, right? What information's there? Is my cost of the good in there and all of that? So depending on how robust that system is, a lot of times you can really walk away with a really, really solid reporting system off of a point of sale and inventory system.
Which goes back to our original conversation. Do we have the right
Yep.
do we have the right piece of software, and are we maximizing the software? But what about here at Celebrate? Like, how many data sets are we looking at to, make sure that our schools are running successfully?
Yeah, on our school, on that health report, it factors in about, I would say, 6 or 7 different systems. And now we're getting into that second layer, right? That second tier where we're really utilizing some of the tools that we had originally looked at and said, okay, that doesn't need to be on page 1, but page 2, or a condensed version, depending on what your role is, you start to see that. And that's where we factored in about 7 more systems that come into that. And when you hear that, those of you that know, right, you're like, that's a lot of data. But we're doing a lot of different things on factoring that consumer piece of it, trying to get a reputation management functions of it in there. And then we have the education piece of it. Then we have the straight business part of it. Mm-hmm. So we really get to see, if I'm in marketing, right, I'm going to look at what my consumer is feeling, what my review scores are on average. And then obviously our key indicators that we want everybody to know, where that business is towards the goal of getting children in the building in this case.
So a couple of those or those 3 or 4 data points could just roll up to one score.
Yeah, and that's something that obviously we've started to really, really hone in on is, what does kind of that all-encompassing red, yellow, green, that stoplight report look like that factors in all of those things on a grading scale and says, hey, if this is, bad, if this is not meeting our goals, that's, -2 on that. And I've nicknamed it our like weighted GPA, right? Everybody's got one of those.
Yeah, love that.
Harder class.
Yeah, love that.
More points towards your weighted GPA. Something that maybe isn't as important.
Yeah.
Half point, point to it. So really making that scale and saying, okay, here's our one number, we've got all this stuff in, and then here's all that detail that still factors in all of our goals, all of our outcomes that we want, and really just gives somebody that single pane of glass that they can then dig into the detail and now even, right, start to ask it questions, and it will use that data to come up with conclusions based on its historical knowledge of the business.
Yeah, I know one of our newest data sets that we're looking at, and it's so important, is is the overall engagement of our franchisee.
And that's one that, when I talk about that weighted grading scale, that's where it comes from, because we have partners on our software side that have opted into giving us more and more data, right? We've had to go back to them and say, hey, we want to be on that leading edge of what you're doing. You're giving us scoring across maybe a data set of 500 brands. How close can you get to giving me mine? And when I talk about that and you can compare it to another business, it really is being able to add custom fields and figure out what you want to do. If I can put in my average net profit and maybe it can calculate something for me if I'm putting in a goal and say, hey, this might not be the right product for you to sell. Or you really need to sell that for $500, not $455.
Yeah.
We want to make sets of data that really, right, keep a business competitive, but also maximize it using the rest of it and industry knowledge and benchmarking, because all that stuff in this information age that we're in right now is available.
Right.
Vendors are starting to utilize that have a industry knowledge, are starting to say, how can I get you, Richie, to buy this instead of going to Microsoft and building it? Mm-hmm. Well, one of the ways that a lot of them have kept it in is they give you a lot of industry knowledge now. And they'll put that into your system if you want, or they'll give you all that data to put into your system if you want and make comparisons. So how am I doing against the average? What am I doing? Can I log in and see a dashboard of that? And that's been one of the ways that people have kept clients, but it's also just a sign of where we're at in the times of things like being able to throw that into ChatGPT and say, make me a data set based on all of this information. And it's not a bunch of people sitting there typing anymore.
So
it's something that's able to do.
So this is, if I heard you right, this is what some of these softwares are being forced to do in order to be competitive in today's landscape.
Yeah, it's a great sales tactic when you think about it. If I'm saying, hey, why wouldn't I build this myself? And you come to me and you say, well, you could, and you might get exactly what you want.
But you're all by yourself.
But you're all by yourself on that island unless you either buy this from us or you have our system and we preload it for you.
There's huge value there. Huge value there.
I mean, I look at some of the ones that we've gotten this year, and they've become more and more functional documents because with some of our partners, we're 3-4 years into them, and they take a lot of feedback on that. Hey, I want to see this number, or hey, can you pull something that maybe shows like a show rate or similar to that? And it's really, really valuable stuff to us. It allows us to see, we can come up with goals here based on historical data, but what's the industry seeing? And when you have specialized products, now you can kind of push them into giving you that. And as we've talked about, time and time again here, nothing is more valuable than the actual factual data from a provider or from our history showing us what our goal should be, because that way it's achievable.
Are we? So what I hear, and I love this, and this is an aha moment for hopefully for a lot of our listeners, is that are we able to push these vendors, these software companies, because of our size, or should anybody be able to pick up the phone and say, hey?
Yeah, my number one goal, looking at a new business, whether it has 20 employees or thousands, is you really don't know those answers until you build the relationship and you ask.
How many people even know that that's available?
I think most entrepreneurs don't think about it. I think a lot of folks that are in IT leadership have really started to lock in that my vendors, my partners, the people we're bringing in here that have kind of the keys to the kingdom, in that case, the system. Maybe they don't have the entire thing, but they're responsible for that. That system goes down. Maybe it's not on me sitting in my seat. It's my partnership with them. I think IT leaders have really woken up to that, especially people that are interested in data. And they know that I need to build a strong relationship with them. I need to rely on them because our business runs off that platform. And then I can start to make asks, right? What's on your roadmap? What custom abilities do I have within your software? And how can you partner with me to leverage my data set to not only help your entire client base, but the bulk, just hidden, data set that's out there? How can that make everybody more money? How can that make your group, your client base more successful? Because that's the only way they can keep paying the bills.
I don't think anybody knows what we're talking about right now or actually implements it, right? They probably think, and this is probably the way I would think, is that I bought this software, I'm using it, thank you very much.
And I think that's the ultimate, I'm going to say it, and it's somewhat in joking. The ultimate enemy of the IT people is software sales. Because software sales, Richie, is exactly what you just said. Here's my great product. Here's the dashboard that's shown on. Here's all the reporting. Here's all the functionality you're going to get if you just basically sign this piece of paper.
And you're going to pay me $100 a month.
I pay you the $100 a month. I log into the thing. It's blank, right? I might get an implementation team on it. I may get that, and I'm sure that the business owners who are listening to this have all lived this. I thought this thing was going to drive my business to the next level. We maybe didn't implement it right. We didn't implement it at all, and I ended up thousands of dollars less in the bank and a piece of software that doesn't work.
So instead of pushing them, you just give up? Most people?
I would say a lot of people. I've walked into countless situations where that's been the case.
Yeah, I would feel that. I could easily see that.
And it's everything, right? And we're lucky that we've surrounded ourselves with some great implementers of products. Specifically our guys at Insight Automation. I mean, they've done great work for us here, and they specialize in certain systems. And it is everything from an accounting system, right? Something that can grind a business to a halt. I worked with a multi-$100 million company, and they put in a new billing and purchase ordering system, and they could not take orders from existing customers we got involved about 2.5 months into that. And we were able to fix it. It was a long road to fix it. It was an expensive and long road to fix it. But they looked at this as a huge reporting advantage, purchase ordering advantage, and really human capital management, right?
So what happened?
They had grown.
What happened? Why did it go sideways?
It was not really thought out in the first place, is the only thing I could come back to. And again, there's the investigation piece of it. Being brought in to fix something, you kind of worry about it all later. You try and dig in, like, what are the details? What does this thing need to do? And how can I take control of this situation? Later on, that's up to them how forensic they want to get with it and really who they want to hold accountable to it is, in the end, it works, right? They're still on that platform. they were too far down the rabbit hole to really come all the way out. They really needed it to work then and there. So it was get this thing functional, whether we're automating emails that are coming out of it. At one point we were, got them to the point where to process an order, we needed to print the PO. Like it was like, they were like, oh, it's like $19.99 in there. I was like, yeah, but at least we're keeping the revenue coming in
Right.
and we're keeping the clients we have happy enough because we can get orders out. And in that case, you kind of go step by step by step. It's like, okay, I need to get something processed and out of here. And then it's like, okay, where's our failure in the system? Can it not take the order? Can it not, in this case, send like the DocuSign out for somebody to sign off on it? And you go through it step by step by step. And here people have always kind of, I think, jokingly said about our department that everything we have, there's a list. Because to implement it, you have to test it. You have to make sure it works. And it is down to, can I print this thing?
Yeah.
Does it send the email that it's supposed to send? Does it send a confirmation to the customer? When it sends them the link, does it address them by the right name? Do we have the name field right? And you really start to get very itemized in what you're doing. But you have to have both minds when you're being the IT leader. How am I maximizing the business? And how am I protecting the business sometimes from itself, from wanting to go too fast, from not testing things fully, and from implementing the product? But the end of that story is about 3 years later, they're on that same system. It did end up working itself out, and
that's a long haul.
It was
years.
It was, and in my opinion, they haven't really gotten that first thing that they bought from the provider. Right? They were after the advanced reporting, the being able to automate the ordering process. At the click of a button, being able to go onto an online portal and buy service from them. And where it ended up is they got about 90% of the way there. They were able to kind of optimize their customer success management department and be able to send out things a lot quicker. So they did get some of the efficiencies they were trying to drive, but it was poor evaluation at the front end of it, not really looking at the tool fully and not saying to them, I'm not going to fully invest in it until I have the proof of concept for it. And that is something at any size business that you can always ask a provider, because all these businesses, right, they're in the game of selling licenses to you. You're their customer. You're the people that they're chasing. And, those of you that have gone through it probably are getting emails 5 years later from those providers that you may have talked to, because they're still after your business. They're still after that sale. You can always ask for, hey, I want to test this. What does this look like? If I need an out in it. And a lot of times they're going to make those concessions to you, and you're going to be able to protect your business and be able to get the result you want.
And I think that's the mind shift there. It's not a transaction. It's actually a relationship. And so don't look at the purchase of a new software as a transaction, right? I bought it, you gave it to me, and now I'm in it. It's like it's a true partnership, and hold them accountable to helping you fully understand what this piece of software is capable of.
Yeah, and that's that evaluation piece that we do here, and something I'm super proud of that we do up front. Right, everybody that we're looking at, we're asking them about what that looks like, what that relationship is. We're asking for guarantees in the contract of it. And then it's our vendor scorecard, reevaluating it on a yearly or on contractual basis, or whatever that needs to look like, whatever we agree to as a leadership team, and then holding them accountable to that, right? When we see them at industry events, or we go out and, like, my team will go out to a lot of the partnership events, the big IT reveals around the country, and we see those vendors. If there's a problem, we're addressing it with that leadership team that's there. But you can never let them necessarily get away with it, as I feel like the term that's used a lot. But you want to hold them accountable to the process, because you're paying them, you're using their product, your feedback's important to them. And if you start to not feel like that, that's when you look at the reevaluation.
Is this a good partnership or not, right? Are they viewing us? And you have to view them as a true partner.
And if you don't, you're not going to get the full result.
Yes.
That you're after.
Yep, got it. Okay. So now let's move into this scary thought of AI. You hear that is the hot new topic. I think everybody's got different thoughts around AI. Some people think it's going to take over the world, and some people think it's going to change the world in a positive way. How are we doing that here at Huffman Family Brands?
So we're doing that a couple ways, and some really, really cool stuff. And
how do you look at it, Mace? I'd love to hear.
Well, those of you that know me that are listening to this have always seen that I'm one of those people that's always, I love a lot of the tools that are out there. I also see a lot of the downsides of them. I absolutely love the AI world, though.
But I think you nailed it. it's a tool.
It is a tool.
It's just a tool.
It's a tool, and we're entering an era where the AI agent. There's been a lot of names that are thrown around there, but the thing that can optimize your processes, whether you're just a person, right? Hey, you can name it whatever you want. My dad and I built one that we share that we named it Doc, and it talks, right? We talk to it. It can join meetings in our company. It can make and build lists for us. And I would say that it has made me more efficient as a tool. And it's starting to learn a lot of things. It's starting to become a little maybe scary is one way to put it. I understand where its knowledge base is coming from, like what it knows and what it doesn't know. So, but every once in a while it will say, we can put it in this, and it'll say like, hey, I'm talking with Richie Huffman. And it looks up Richie Huffman. It knows who he is. Doc
was off an old movie, wasn't it? Was that on a movie?
I'm sure he named it something. I mean, you know him well.
I think there was a movie
like
that. And AI is not. It's not new. AI has been around for what, 70s?
I mean, I think you can go back to the way we call something AI now. You could go to like the 70s, the 60s, back almost into like World War II era kind of early just technology, being able to run something through a system and it tell you an output, right? Yeah. What was known as like machine learning. You look at like Watson, and it's funny when you say that, like Watson on Jeopardy, I think that was like 2013, 2014. And it was like, there's this robot that's beating people on Jeopardy, and like everybody was watching it, and it's super cool. And then you kind of forgot about it for a couple of years. But in that couple of years, or 10 years,
it was still being developed.
It was being developed. People, they try and they fail. Microsoft had something, and it's one of like the cautionary tales about it. They released an AI bot onto Reddit. People convinced it that it was maybe not the most politically correct thing ever. And they kind of took it down. They were like, "Oh my God, this thing it can get out of hand. It's dangerous." And now you're into where we are now, and there's a ton of ways to leverage it for good, and there's a lot of bad actors using it for evil. And we're gonna see what the world leaders think of it. I'm when you really ask what I think people should be able to develop it, and as humans, we'll know where it is, because we do have a lot of people that are acting very ethical when it comes to this, and we have people that aren't. But reality when it comes to AI is, if you ask me what's going to be in 10 years, nobody really knows, because it's almost self-developing. Like it is so smart as far as programming itself and being able to automate certain tasks that are out there, be able to do certain things, that it's a great tool. It's going to be a tool, and then it's going to become at one point be able to kind of think on its own, and that'll be its own thing, and it really will be true AI. It won't just be a large language model that's out there. It won't be just like a learned thing where you can teach it tasks, but will it really be able to teach itself things? And that's where like the overlord conversation comes in, and everybody gets scared of it. But right now, it can be used to optimize tasks, figure out load information into it and give you great answers. And in my case, right, I've taught it certain things, and every once in a while it'll remind me of them. And I'm like, that's a great point. Mm-hmm. I forgot that I need to do that, or I forgot that I knew that person, or just depending on what it can do, it really can remind you of a lot of things.
What are some of the things? What are some of the ways that small business or even mid-sized businesses or how are they using?
Yeah, I think a really, really great way is to load standard operating procedures into an AI. Obviously, ask it questions. It can write emails. So I'm going to kind of skip over all like the basic things. If you have ChatGPT or Copilot on your phone, but being able to load repeatable tasks into it and have it execute. In our case, one of the things we've done is take transcripts and be able to load it through the agent, and we've given it kind of a rubric. It can score that on that, right? It can score a conversation, it can score a call, and we have a lot of great tools that we can load into it that give it that framework to be able to score things like our competencies, which you've talked about on this podcast, and be able to look at that from a truly the lens that you've taught it. So sometimes maybe we're having a conversation and you have an opinion, right? And you have guidelines for it, and you may score down that, but how about something that's completely agnostic, right? That's not necessarily making the judgments that we may make as people, and can use that scoring rubric and give you an opinion on it. And I say opinion there completely with purpose. You probably shouldn't just score it off of what it thinks, right? If you train it and you're 100% certain on it, you can get there. But mainly it's giving you a comparison, right? A different thought or a learned thought that it found off the internet and advising you on it. You almost have to think about it like your nonstop assistant or consultant. But buying into fully what it's saying, you see all the disclaimers on it, they are true. It's not 100% accurate.
How does that actually do that? I know it goes out there and finds the data or whatever. I'm totally over my skis right now.
Yeah, it's come up with a model, and it's one that I think everybody's chasing, right? Those of you that are in business, I'm sure you've heard about SEO, search engine optimization.
Mm-hmm.
It's come up with its own version of that really is locked in on thought leaders and content. Or in original content. And the funniest thing about it is you used to be able to ask AI, of course you can still ask it, for content, right? Captions, articles, blogs, and people would just steal them from it. So one of the things that especially the OpenAI and Copilot partnership came back with was figuring out how to grade something and know if it was written by itself, and it throws that content out. So it's still looking for original thought and original leadership and original whatever your topic is. And it's going out there and trying to find the truest source of that and learn that knowledge. But it does know when something is written by itself, which is, wild when you think about it. And you can say, change the tone of this, or I don't want to use this word, and do that. And it can still detect for the most part what it generated and how it was run through there and how you utilized it. And then it generally tends to not like that. Now, there's a lot of AI out there. Certain ones are really, really locked in on that thought process, or only after things that were written by its model, and they'll accept something from another model. Others they don't want AI content feeding it. So they don't want to create that loop. They want to still kind of embrace the writers, embrace the thought, the philosophers of the industry, and they really want to get their thoughts and still acknowledge that and not create just the AI feeding the AI.
Got it. Okay. So this has been 10 times more enjoyable than I thought it was going to be honest with you. I think if you're not focused on this as an entrepreneur and a business leader, you will be left behind.
I would definitely think that is definitely becoming the case.
It's a competitive advantage, huge competitive advantage.
I feel like we're at the crossroads of this. A lot of people have the apps on their phone. They're using it themselves. They're using it in their personal life. Their kids are using it at school. Everyone's learning about how to do that.
Mm-hmm.
The difference will be how you can optimize it for what you're doing, how I can load my process into it, my data sets into it, get that analysis from it, and then make those into repeatable processes. So maybe I don't need that headcount. Or maybe that headcount really can do the job that I hired them for and not just be in Excel all day.
Yeah.
And then you'll really start to see the value of it, and it will build its knowledge on your organization, and you'll be able to train it on how you want people to act in your company, and you'll get the most out of it.
I think that's a great way to wrap it up. Well, Mason, listen, thank you. And I did not realize that you have been here since you were 14 years old. You're like 6'5", so you at 14 you were probably 6'2", so you probably didn't look like you were 14 walking around here. But I really enjoy you, dude. You're a smart young man, and you made such an impact here on HFB, and I'm grateful for that. So thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, guys, thank you so much for listening to Enrich Your Empire. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram and LinkedIn at Richie Huffman Celebrate. We've got more great episodes lined up for you, so check back with us soon. Until then, stay inspired, stay driven, and keep building your empire.